But here queen e7 would be bad because then white could push d6. Hey guys, this is Andy from Noctie, and today we're gonna go through the weekly scenario for week 39 of 2025. So let's take a look at this week's scenario. This week's position comes from a course on pawn breaks by Lavinia Valcu, a talented young player from Sweden, and actually she's the youngest ever member of the Swedish women's national team. In her course, she goes through everything about pawn breaks and also pawn chains, and discusses the most common ideas for pawn breaks in typical pawn structures, such as the Carlsbad, the isolated queen's pawn, and so on. And this position is a sparring position from that course. I'll put the link down in the description if you want to check out the full course. So let's take a look at Black's idea here. So we've already mentioned that it's about pawn breaks. And the main idea with pawn breaks is that we can shift the pawn structure with it, and usually we want to create weak squares in the opponent's camp when doing a pawn break. And in this position, the move that Black should be calculating is e5, a very thematic pawn break in the center where it contests White's center. So let's take a look at what happens if we play this move. So first, let's just look at the most concrete response to this. So what if White captures a pawn? Well, this fails due to a tactical sequence. We can capture the pawn here on c5 with the knight. Of course, this exposes our own queen to the rook, but at the same time, we're also threatening White's queen here on b3. So if White takes our queen, we can simply take their queen with check, and when White takes back, we take the rook, and here we are in exchange up. So that doesn't work for White. So let's go back a couple of moves to this position. Here, instead of taking our queen, White should play queen a3. So now the threat is once again renewed against our own queen. So here we should simply move our queen and defend our knight. There aren't many moves that do so, but queen e7 is the strongest. And here we are actually exposed to a pin where our queen is unprotected. So our knight here is pinned. So this position is quite sharp, and you need to calculate very carefully. So here White increases the pressure on our knight by playing knight a4. Now there are two pieces attacking our knight, but the critical move that Black must have foreseen when playing e5 is b6. And also we must assess that the following endgame should be good for Black, because here White can take and we swap queens, and when the dust settles, let's take a look at this endgame. So here, both sides have 6 pawns, so materially it's equal. But Black has the advantage. So while both sides have weak double pawns, it's easier for Black to target White's pawns. So for one thing, the bishop here is already eyeing the e4 pawn. And furthermore, we can play rook e8 and then hitting the e5 pawn. While at the same time, our own pawns here on c6 and c5 are more difficult to reach for White. So now let's just go back to the starting position and look at alternative moves for White. So we've seen that capturing our e5 pawn leads to an advantage for us. So what more could White do? Well, another move is to first play knight a4, maintaining tension. And this is a common idea against pawn breaks, is that when facing a pawn break, it's usually a good idea to maintain tension and see what the opponent does. So here it's our move, and we can simply play a natural move, queen e7, developing the queen, adding more support to the e5 square, and targeting the c5 pawn. And here White does the same, maintaining tension and strengthening the position. So here Black can simply play rook a to a8, because look, before our rook here on a7 was really out of place because it was before guarding the b7 square. But now that White's queen has moved away, we can simply bring our rook to the game. And here the position is roughly equal, but Black holds a slight positional advantage, and that is thanks to the fact that we are disturbing White's center and sooner or later white must decide what to do with the center. And if the d pawn moves, then our knight will have the possibility to either jump into e5, a great outpost, or target the c5 pawn. So here black will simply bring in the rooks, continue developing, and at some point we can choose to capture on d4. So yeah, let's go back one more time and see how the game continued from here. So here, after we played e5, white in the game played queen c4. And this is a bit of a tricky move because white maintains tension, and at the same time now we cannot capture on d4 because then white will take with the queen, delivering check, and there will be some trouble here on the d file. So here black played queen f6, a very strong move. Now we are once more threatening to take the pawn, and also we are adding another defender to the e5 pawn. So here white took, black took with the knight, queen d4, and here rook a to a8, once more bringing in the a rook ready to step into the game. So here white plays queen e3, moving the queen away from the vulnerable d file, and here black continued with rook a to d8, contesting the d file. And from here black holds a clear advantage, a positional advantage, because let's see, we have a great knight here on e5, that's a very strong outpost. Notice white does not have any pawns left on the f and d files, meaning that this knight cannot be disturbed by a pawn. And furthermore, it is on a dark square, so it's on an opposite color of the opponent's bishop. So this knight will be very strong and difficult for white to remove. And also white has a weak pawn here on e4 that could become a target, as well as the c5 pawn here is weak. Black went on here and won the game. So now it's our turn to play against Noctie. Let's see if we can manage to convert this. Okay, so here we are against Noctie. Let's see if we can manage to win this. So as we discussed, I'm going to go ahead and play the strong e5 pawn break. Let's see here. Okay, interesting. So Noctie plays a move that we didn't cover, and it's marked as orange or brownish, so meaning it's a mistake. Let's see here. What is the idea for white? Interesting, and Noctie played this quite quickly. So, well, the first thing that we should see here is that the knight could just grab the c5 pawn and also hitting the queen. So we are grabbing a pawn with tempo. But the position is quite sharp, so we need to calculate concretely. So let's say we take the pawn. What if white plays queen a3? So our knight is there, queen a3, hitting our knight. What should we play then? In the game, queen e7 was played, or something similar. But here, queen e7 would be bad, because then white could push d6, interfering our defense on the knight, and then in the next move the queen will pick up the knight on c5. Okay, I see. So I think that's the idea behind Noctie's move. Sacrificing the c5 pawn and yeah, gaining counterplay. And also there's room for us to make a fatal mistake. So queen e7 does not work, and queen d6 looks bad too, because, or wait, queen d6 perhaps works, because pawn captures we can just take with the queen. Could that be the right idea? Let's see. But frankly here, I don't think we have much choice but to capture the pawn. So yeah, let's do that first and see what we should come up with next. Okay, Noctie didn't play queen a3, but queen b4. So a practical tip when calculating is that sometimes, even though we don't see the continuation for us down to the end, if there aren't any other moves, then we're basically forced to go with that line anyways. And in the position here, I think we are basically forced to play knight takes c5. And here we should pause and calculate it through. So now I don't think we have much choice. Oh, I see, yeah, queen b4 makes sense because white must protect the e4 pawn. Because when our knight took on c5, we're of course also attacking the e4 pawn. But now queen b6 is not possible, so now we have queen e7 or queen d6. Let's see, queen e7, then d6, interfering the defense of the knight. And on the next move, I think the knight will be undefendable. Yeah. So here, basically, queen d6 only move unless we have to look for something more creative. But let's see, queen d6. If pawn takes, we take with the queen. And that's fine. We do lose control over the d5 square, but on the other hand, white has sacrificed a pawn, so yeah, we should be happy with that. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead with queen d6. Nice, we got a blue move, so that is a great move. Happy to see that. And also interesting when Noctie deviates from our analysis. Okay. Here, Noctie continues with the tricky stuff. Now attacking our rook here on a7. What should we do? The easy response is of course just to play rook a to a8. The b7 pawn is still protected, so that's fine. And if white takes our c6 pawn, we can of course just take back with the queen. And we are not afraid of a queen exchange because we are still one pawn up. But do we have something creative, like taking here? No, I don't think so, because then Noctie will just grab our rook, and that's a full rook, so I don't think that sacrificing works. So yeah, I'm gonna just play rook a to a8 and see what Noctie comes up with. Remember, we are one pawn up. Noctie has sacrificed a pawn. So instead of going to like a inferior positional position, Noctie sacrifices the pawn to gain some counterplay. Okay, Noctie develops, and it seems that we are out of trouble, right? So here, can we just take the e4 pawn? We take, and if knight takes, we take with the bishop. Yeah, should be possible, right? Let's do that. Yeah. So apparently Noctie decides to give up material in order to activate the pieces. But of course, that is really risky and double-edged, because if it goes wrong, then we're simply massively up in material. But on the other hand, if he manages to get some counterplay and get the pieces out, then we might be in trouble. Okay, let's see. Here we should just take the c6 pawn and try to get the queens off the board. All right, we're happy with that. We are 2 pawns up in this endgame, and the colors of the bishops are the same color. That's also important to have in mind, that when we transition into endgames, if we have opposite colored bishops, then it's going to be more difficult to win, or it's going to be easier for the defensive side. But here, both our bishops are light square bishops. So yeah, I think they looks promising. Here, there are perhaps some nasty discovered attacks going on, so I think we can just swap off the knights. I mean, we could go for some knight f2 move, but on the other hand, our knight would be quite trapped there, wouldn't it? So yeah, I'm just gonna take it and play simple moves. We are 2 pawns ahead. We're just gonna try to simplify this down and hopefully convert the endgame. Let's see. Okay, here we can try for some active stuff. Rook b8, threatening to go into the to the first rank with the check. Then we're going to go with that. So when we're ahead, we want to be patient, take it slowly, but still we want to look out for decisive moves. Okay. Offering to swap off the bishops, and yeah, we should be happy with that. Let's just do it. And what do we do now? Now they're attacking our e5 pawn, and now we have a double rook endgame. So rook endgames are quite difficult to convert, and yeah, there are a lot of theoretical positions and techniques that you need to know. But here we are 2 pawns up, so I hope that we can manage to do this. So how can we play actively? So the most important thing in rook endgames is the activity of the rooks. So here we could play rook e8 to defend the pawn, but could we play perhaps rook b5, defending the pawn this way? And if white goes c4, then we can move the rook to either c5 or a5. Yeah, I like this move. I'm going to go with that. Nice. So we got our first purple move for today. So purple, remember, that's the best move according to Noctie's evaluation. So purple is excellent. Green is good and blue is great. Okay. Let's see. Noctie is threatening our c6 pawn, but could we be tricky and play rook f to b8? If Noctie takes the pawn, we give a check. King there is the only move. Give another check, and the rook will be falling. So yeah, I think we can do this. So always look for intermediate moves, or perhaps facing a threat with another threat. So instead of defending the c6 pawn, we could create a threat of our own. Let's see here. We could go there, of course, and then pick up the pawns. Yeah, I think we should just move in with the rook. So now we have a choice. Either we can take the a pawn or the g pawn. So what do we do? I think I'm going to take the a pawn, because then our a6 pawn will be defended in case white takes the c pawn. Let's do that. Okay, we got a dubious move, so that perhaps wasn't so accurate. Now I'm thinking of, let's see, moving in with this rook, threatening a skewer and also adding more pressure along the second rank. But we got another dubious, so I definitely need to work on my rook endgame skills. Okay, let's see. Okay, what if we grab the pawn and then perhaps double the rooks and go for these pawns? Yeah, looks good to me. What does Noctie do? Grab pawns, or perhaps create some counterplay against our own second rank, or the 7th rank, so to say. Yeah, okay, that's a good move, because now if we're not careful, Noctie's going to play rook d7, and then it's going to be hard to defend the f7 pawn. So here we need to be tricky. Let's see. Even though we are 3 pawns up, we need to watch out. Here, I'm just going to play this move. Nice, another purple move. So here we must defend the f7 pawn, and we are doing it via an X-ray. Okay. What happens here? Now Noctie is threatening to take with this rook, and then they'll have control over the 6th rank. So perhaps we should play rook f6, and if Noctie takes, then we can take back, and then we'll have too much material. Yeah, that looks good. Noctie takes, and here we swap off one pair of rooks, and we still have 2 pawns up. So now I think the idea is to, let's see. I want to march these pawns, so yeah, f5. Start marching. So remember, it's also the quality of the pawns that matters, and especially the quality of the passed pawns. So here Noctie makes a blunder, and that's because now we can force a rook exchange, and after that the following pawn endgame should be winning. Okay, let's just go over this to double check. Rook checks, king goes there, we take the rook, king takes. So now their king is on d6. All right, now it's time to start marching. f4, they play c4, f3, c5, f2, c6, f1 queen, c7, and then we can bring our queen here, controlling the queening square. Yes, this works. Let's go with that. And nice, that's a purple move, so it's a good move, and also the only good move. Okay, we take, and now we start marching. But here is also quite critical because we can't waste any tempo. If we move the king or move the other pawn, then white's pawn will be very fast. So here we play f4 simply, no time to waste. And here, all right, so now Noctie tries to go back with the king, but an essential pawn in game concept is the square. So when we have a passed pawn like this, we can draw a line following the diagonals until it meets the edge of the board. In this case, it will be the c1 square, and that will be the diagonal of our square. So if we draw a square with that diagonal, and if the opponent's king is within the square, then they'll be able to catch up to our pawn. But here it's our move, so we can play f3, and once again white's king is outside of the square. So yeah, we will be in time to get a new queen. All right. And on the next move, we'll have a new queen and be able to deliver checkmate very soon. So yeah. And on the next move, we'll have checkmate with 2 queens. All right, nice, we did it. So this week's scenario was about pawn breaks. It comes from a course on pawn breaks by Lavinia Valcu. And actually, we're starting a series on positional mastery with Lavinia, going through the ideas of pawn breaks, piece improvement, piece exchanges, and so on. I'll put the link down in the description where you can find the full course on pawn breaks. So feel free to check that out if you want to learn more about that. And yeah, it was really fun position to play, although quite challenging because from the beginning the position was quite equal. Black had a slight positional advantage, and yeah, from there on we managed to create some weaknesses in white's camp. And of course, Noctie too made some slight inaccuracies and a couple of mistakes that made it easier for us to finish the job. To challenge yourself, remember, you can always increase the difficulty of Noctie. If you, for example, completed the mission on the current level, you can increase Noctie's strength to further challenge yourselves. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy playing. Bye bye!